Thanks everyone for coming. My name is Paul Pangaro. I know many of you. I welcome you, and I welcome those who are here for the first time. We appreciate your time today for the NewMacy Network. Today will be a little bit of an improvisation in the best sense. We have much to do, and there will be some intense moments and some more leisurely moments, but we've done the best to plan. And we hope that your contribution is enjoyable, as well as, of course, part of the idea of having these conversations. So for those of you who are new to NewMacy, I wanted just to give a little bit of background on how and why we're here. So a little review of that, a quick review of the plan for today in two parts, and then we'll move to your participation and so on. The idea for NewMacy came up in March of 2020 with COVID, of course, obviously a pandemic of biology. The word pandemic, here we invoke Heinz von Forster by going to the etymology of the word that we begin with, comes from pan, meaning all, but also demos, the same root as democracy, meaning of the people. But specifically people who are bound in a collective as defined by the land that they share. And of course, today's pandemic is global. The land we share is our land, our globe, our spaceship, Earth, overwhelmed with pandemics just of biology, not just of biology, but also that threaten climate and environment, health, and that of all the living species on the planet. And of course, the threat to our own equality and our democracies, and indeed to our ability to live together. So the conversation that began in the March of 2020 was that there were many pandemics, and what would we, coming from the systems and cybernetics communities, wish to do about it? What could we do? How could we bring about enough variety to encounter the variety that was coming at us in the form of pandemics, such that we would be able to make it yield an inch? We wouldn't have all the variety we would need to overwhelm and contain pandemics, but we would do our best. And this for us invoked the idea of the original Macy meetings, I suspect all of you are familiar with, but just in case. In the 1940s and 1950s, there were a series of meetings funded by a nonprofit foundation, the Macy Foundation, which was at the core of cybernetics rising as a distinct discipline. And those meetings in the 20th century were transdisciplinary in that, name a discipline, and very likely that discipline was not only there, but richly participating in the original Macy's. But also this created a network effect that went out around the globe and influenced, I think it's fair to say, the entire world of thinking at the time. And that's, the Macy meetings were one of the things that brought cybernetics to the world, very importantly. So in the 21st century, how would we evoke scale to do something about some of the pandemics? And this generated the idea of the new Macy meetings. So this is the original proceedings, and we invoke the new Macy meetings in this way. So just for another moment or two, those original Macy meetings, as noted, were transdisciplinary, but this is a new world. This is the 21st century. So we need them to be transglobal, diverse, and inclusive, naturally. And also transgenerational. This is something very close to me. We must embrace all ages, all worldviews in conversations to make a better world. And here we are in this meeting, which we're calling NewMacy number 3, having had a few, but to say that those meetings are the NewMacy initiative is deceptive. There have been countless conversations, many of them one-on-one with people here and those who are not here, and bi-weekly meetings, and a kind of constant view of what do we do, what can we do, and how might we do it. So this has led to two ideas. One is we want to be concrete. We want to have conversations which lead to agreement, which lead to coordinated action, which lead to change. But also, myself, for example, I don't know much about so many of these pandemics, certainly the biological one, but I do know something about cybernetics and AI and other things related to technology. So can we focus in areas, we're trying to call them hubs or themes, groupings of people and ideas that will have initiatives of their own and fan out in this network of NewMacy, always toward concrete action. So our purpose today is to accumulate from these prior 2 meetings 4 themes that we have worked on and evolved a little bit. Sometimes we diverge, sometimes we converge. Today, we want to present those 4 themes to all of you and then ask that each one of you pick one of them and then enter a conversation about them, always with refinement and toward concrete action in mind. So this is a little informal introduction. There are so many people to thank, many of whom are on this call and many are not, as I said, who have brought us to where we are today, and my appreciation there is great. So thank you for coming, and thanks to all who brought us to this point. So today, from urgent themes to concrete actions. In this part 1, you'll see in the shared screen, that's a little NewMacy overview, talking today about what we'll do today and the introduction to the themes. I'm getting an echo, someone. Okay, good. We'll introduce the themes, we'll do breakout conversations, and we'll coalesce toward the concrete. I love that phrase. This is part 1, about 90 minutes. And this is the individual structure of that. Let's come back to this. Part 2 is all the themes in discussion. We expect a few more people will come at the hour-and-a-half mark. We hope that you'll stay. It's a rather heavy lift to be engaged in video for 3 hours, but we hope you'll come. Now I want to ask that we go through the themes one by one. So we have 4 facilitators who kindly agreed to help us today. It would be wonderful if you could introduce yourself and then in 1 minute, present the theme such that everyone can get a sense of the 4 themes. Then we'll show you a summary slide, and then a minute or 2 after that, ask you to go into the breakout rooms. So theme number 1.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Salvaggio, and I'll be the facilitator for group number 1. The focus for this theme is on disciplines and the idea of disciplines, particularly in education. I'll read the question out loud. The dissection of education into disciplines encourages modes of interactivity that valorize digital binary frameworks, such as science or engineering in some cases, and dismiss analogic ones, such as the arts. This needs to be challenged. Could cybernetics assist us in developing methodologies and/or technologies to address these issues, and how so? So that's theme 1.
Thank you, Eric.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Munton. I'll be facilitating theme 2, which is about sustainability. Here we'll be thinking about how automated and interactive systems might be designed for environmental sustainability and long-term viability of all we cherish as human beings. We hope to consider precedents from many great cyberneticians who have come before us, who are working now, to think about how we can develop such technologies, perhaps themes of symbiotic technologies may come up, or ultra stability. Thank you.
Larry.
Yeah, do we have the next theme on the slide?
Here we go. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Larry Richards. I'll attempt to facilitate theme 3, conversation machines. Conversation, of course, is a key concept emerging from cybernetics. At least I think so. Technologies should actualize, therefore, in the form of conversation machines, whatever that means. And part of this theme will be to explore what that means. Could. Some of the examples that we have: Passkey machines, Paul's thought sticker, stab of ears. Viable systems model is Integrative. Bernard Scott's educational technology, and so forth. Could they be somehow models or precedents for moving in this direction? Why are there other examples?
Great, thank you, Larry. And lastly, theme 4, Claudia.
Hi, I'm Claudia Westermann. I'm facilitating theme 4, entitled Integrative Approach. It relates to creativity and art and design, so I'm reading it. Increasingly intrusive AI needs to be countered by an approach to systems theory and practice that integrates design and the arts. Cybernetics in such an approach, encouraging improvisation and creativity, drawing on multiple levels of consciousness and connection and involving both humans and the world of which we are part. What are the precedents or models one could build on? How could one develop this further? That is theme 4.
Wonderful. Thank you, Claudia. Thanks to all 4. So here are the themes on one slide. In the interest of improv, we give you just a moment to have a look. And then we'll tell you how to get into the breakout rooms. So there's some curious aspects here. If everyone goes into one room, then that will lead to some interesting crowded discussions and make others more sparse. But we're here to keep it improvisational and light. I assume that nearly all of you know about breakout rooms. We'll come in a moment to a hint about that if you need one. But let me also say that we are not averse to new themes and new breakouts. This may make more sense after you have the initial breakout session, which we'll put you into in just a moment. But we invite new themes. Clearly, we invite the evolution of existing themes. That's the whole point of the session today. So feel free to make those clear one way or another. So we'll head into the breakout number 1 for 15 minutes of group discussion. It's very intense. It's very brief. You'll see the precise agenda when you get there. You're back in the main room. You may not realize it. This is back to the general session. So the breakouts are now stopped, and we're going to have a general readout. And I would just ask each theme host one by one to go through. So theme number 1, can we have, I would love to run a timer that runs for 4 minutes. So preferably 1 minute to present what you did, and then 3 more minutes of brief discussion from everyone else. Shall we just try that? Unless you have another idea, Eric.
Well, we ran into a bit of a time crunch because we just had so many people.
Of course.
Yes, and again, we did introduce the activity with full understanding that we would have this. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of run through some keywords that emerged.
Great.
After framing it, that there was a lot of discussion about whether or not question 4 and question 1 were actually necessary to understand together.
Excellent.
And I think that that's an opportunity for some broader discussion. But
Great.
some of the—
is there a slide to share, or is it all verbal?
there is a slide to share, though it's not going to be very helpful. It's slide 20 in the real-time deck.
Okay, great. So please start.
Okay. Essentially what we came to was the idea that if we were going to think about reframing the concept of disciplines around these cybernetic models, then we would want to look at systems that works according to some of the following words, which we need to unpack and have more time to explore, flagging that loud and clear. Questioning the idea of the subjective and objective position, thinking about decolonizing arts and sciences and cybernetics, I would say more broadly. Thinking about bottom-up approaches, thinking about iterative approaches, democratic ones that are inclusive and curiosity at their core. I'm hoping that was an accurate summary and that people feel somewhat like I captured the flavor of the conversation.
We could take a minute or two if others want to make comments, but we would need to be brief.
Yeah, for me, I accepted the validity of the question. Okay, education is fragmented. How can cybernetics change it? I'm interested in what would make such a cybernetic approach distinctly cybernetic. And for me, that was, it is bottom up. It is iterative, involves a long-term perspective. There's feedback involved, democratic decision-making, taking everyone into account, curiosity, humility, listening and understanding, and making room for learning, for error and course corrections. And so this would be what would make such an approach distinctly cybernetic. And then in the next step, we can talk about education and how can we change education, for example. Okay, that was what I had to say.
Paul, can I say something really quickly?
Please.
So just following Michael's comments, I think that the separation of themes 1 from 4 is fundamentally a kind of problem, because this idea of error, of experimentation, or of embracing error and curiosity, it plays out in the questions that theme 4 addresses. So we're missing a sort of pragmatics or following through of this education, of this idea of education, if we're not addressing it within the context of theme 4 also.
Lovely. So can you propose maybe in the next room, in the next breakout, and possibly requiring people from 1 and 4 to get together? We may need to clarify that if people still want to keep it separate. And then rephrase in the context of the next breakout. Would that make sense? Would those in room 1 and 4 speak now and say whether they want to stay separate or join a common?
I mean, I like the joining of somebody who was in theme 4.
So there's a vote, 2 votes for joining, and actually more than multiple ones.
I think it's a
I don't
great
wanna-
idea to join, Paul.
I was in
Great.
4 and I agree. I would like to see the joint.
Great. So 1 and 4 will join. Adler, maybe an adjustment to the breakouts would make sense there.
Just to clarify, is there anyone interested in not joining that would prefer to stay in theme 1?
Or 4.
Not
Seems
really.
good.
Let's see what
Hearing
happens.
no takers.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll join.
So-
Well,
one
they
and
have different
Yeah.
initial conditions. So, I mean, I think as we continue to break out, there's going to be a sorting out that's probably going to take at least 1 breakout. So I'm just, it may make sense, but it may not be productive.
Yes, we might have too many people, or we might have maybe be open to theme 1/4 rooms then.
We could have 2 rooms of theme 1/4, and we could see where it
Right,
goes.
yeah.
Well, we
So-
haven't reported on 4 yet
Agreed.
either.
Yes.
Should we go directly to 4?
You can share slide 14. That's the one. Yes, the one with the without the. It should be. I
Are you-
worked in.
Are
Yes.
you seeing 14 now? Good.
Ah,
Yes.
okay, yeah. So quickly reporting, we discussed what was written, and so there was there was a lot of discussion. So increasingly, now it's off, or maybe I have to read from my own.
I'm tweaking it. I apologize. I was trying to make it larger.
Okay. Increasingly intrusive was considered not strong enough. There was a suggestion that is not strong enough. We are already in a stage that is a true emergency. So the wording here is probably not strong enough. The idea of AI should probably be accompanied with some commentary that it is soulless. There's also an idea that it may not, whether it can be countered or should be balanced, but the monster cannot be balanced. Otherwise, the question or the theme introduction is okay, but it obviously would need to be rewritten, possibly also taking into account that there's a difference between design and art. And then, so we need examples for how to make AI more transparent. Regarding the idea of counterbalancing, we could consider displacement as something that is intrinsic to the human social political, and that seems to be an important part of what is not considered by today's AI. Also, we should consider ethics, creativity, intuitivity, the unexpected, expecting the unexpected of design systems, including also institutions. And they should take into account biological systems with the set of words I just mentioned. Art and design then allow for a unique opportunity to provide access to this other, which is not AI. This last sentence, I just added it, trying to summarize Damien's remark. Maybe someone else would like to still add to this, what I just said.
Well, I was just thinking, Claudia, we talked about how the potential other might be enabled through intervention, and that intervention might be cited through the creative realm, potentially through the arts, as that gives an access point, a very constructive access point.
So we should emphasize intervention, probably here somewhat. We could do this in the next session.
TJ's also made a comment in the chat for those of you who can multitask. Eve as well. Any other commentary from those in this session? We have a minute.
Yeah, my theme 2 still needs to. I hope I'm not jumping in on somebody else's turn. Sorry.
No. Yeah, we have 2 and 3 to come. We jumped from 1 to 4. We'll come back to 2 and 3 in a moment. But
Paul, this is
each.
Jamie Rose for half a second.
Hey, Jamie.
Just to comment that AI systems were developed initially to the benefit of humanity with that thematic approach, but at some point it became an issue where its own priority, and so that became a competitive point of issue to the preservation of the AI systems, regardless of whether it was to the benefit of humanity generally or not. And that's an issue that we're intuitively confronting almost every single day.
Good. Okay, that's the limit there. Let's try to keep moving. Again, it's an improv. We understand that this is a slightly different format than long expositions. You'll have more time in 20 minutes. And if you have the stamina to stay for part 2, there will be very long discussion sessions in part 2. So let's move on now to theme number 2. Is there a particular slide that I should aim for?
Yeah, I would just go towards, I think, slide 8. I was kind of just jotting notes
Great.
about the group.
Great, 4 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Excellent. So the pieces that I picked up were that we're interested in cybernetic technologies or just cybernetic lenses to help build or foster interspecies feedback, communication, and reciprocity. Anybody from the group who would like to elaborate on some of these points, please feel free to.
Further commentary from room number 2? Igor.
Well, I can try a bit. I think we went into the reciprocity processes, basically learning. Let's go from there maybe to interactions and developing relations, not only to human, but to other basically I like the term all we cherish as human beings, and we should. Went into two directions. Well, first direction was of course animal and plant life, and invoking them and putting, I think, some kind of header of them. And another one was interesting, and it might help building a bridge to theme 4, which was also the artificial intelligence technology, whether it can maybe sometimes in the future be cherished as human beings. And that evokes learning and that understanding the evolutionary developments. I don't know. Maybe we can draw from there to guide the process somehow.
Other comments from room 2 and theme 2?
This is Fred. I'll just add one other thing. And Michael, thanks very much for facilitating and taking notes and presenting. But that's actually part of what I think we also were talking about, the importance of holding on to variety, getting back to how you introduced the topic in the first place, Paul. And so reciprocity requires holding on to the variety in the face of changing circumstances. And that was an underlying theme.
Good. We have another minute for theme 2. Would others like to make comments?
Yeah, I sort of my focus, I guess, or addition to the conversation was kind of taking into consideration kind of the agency of non-human organisms and having them, like, can we make conversational machines, let's say, for sustainability that take into account, let's say, some organism or some aspect of part of the environment that we may use as resources, for example. And so I think an example I gave was phytoplankton, which is like, I think something like 60% of the oxygen, is generated from like ocean phytoplankton. Maybe they have a say into how they are used or not used, right? So can we make that sort of kind of interspecies communication that leads to some kind of agreement, right, between very different life worlds, right, between, again, like a phytoplankton and a human society or something. So
We will need to redefine the language as such.
and I think about just where we put system boundaries, right? Is it organism the boundary, or I talked about that notion of superorganisms, like for humans have actually more bacterial cells than human cells, right? So where do you draw those boundaries?
Good. Thank you for the comments. We should move to theme 3. And any particular slide for theme 3?
Well,
I see there were a series of slides for theme 2. I apologize for that.
Well,
is this the best one for theme 3?
This is the one. Adler took these notes. Adler, would you like to give your impressions?
Sure. I thought it was a really rich conversation, and especially looking at different approach of the role of technology. And I particularly like when, the question, what's a conversation machine, and what we do with whatever it is. And I think to give an example of these different approaches, one is absorbing distractions. Another one is augmenting our conversations. So using technologies to augment our conversations. Another one is as a container for the conversations. And the last one, the fourth one, is technology as to enable this participation to move from conversation, but to participate, which I think today is an example of that. So the discussion was all about these different approaches and how technology can play a role. And yeah, I think that sort of summarizes, we were cut by the short time. But I think that summarizes a bit the different interventions.
Other comments from those in theme 3?
A couple of other items that came up. One had to do with, is there a role still for hierarchical sequential structures in our machines as we move toward more conversation-friendly AI? And the other one had to do with therapy. Even going back to Eliza, is this a conversation machine? If not, why not? And how do we think about this?
Great. Reminds me of Pickering's comments in the last NewMacy number 2, which in part led to this particular theme, and some other conversations with him about the nature of a stimulus from something like Eliza. It stimulates a conversation with myself, even if it's not participating as a full agent. So there are many dimensions. We ended up with about 6 different dimensions of thinking about what occurs in the course of conversations with or without machines, to varying degrees, depending on the instrumentality of the machine and its sophistication. Any other comments on theme 3?
This is Deborah Forster. It just made me think the last couple of comments about Vygotsky approach to development, which is having conversations and interactions between individuals is just the first step to starting to have conversations with yourself. So it almost like what we do between is a model for how we can converse also inside. And that happens in development, but it might also be something that we could orchestrate more deliberately.
Beautifully said, orchestrate. It's wonderful. So the plan was, let's revisit, to right now go back into the breakouts and spend now a more leisurely time, 20 minutes, with the idea of refining and coming out with slides that we won't view in this part, but we would view half an hour from now when we start part 2 with others who are coming, and then continue a broader discussion there. So the current plan is one more breakout, 20 minutes, and then the broader part 2 with everyone and a discussion with many. It would be wonderful if all the groups, each theme group, could come with a refined slide to share in part 2 and to continue the discussion. We don't know how many more will be coming then, if any. It's part of the improvisation of it all, but this is the plan. Any commentary before we ask you to choose again the breakouts you wish to choose?
Well, just to note, since there was a divergence in terms of staying and leaving, I left the same structure, so everyone would go to the same groups, but then you can change. And I also created theme 1/4.
Great. So if you go to your breakout panel, each of you, you will see the prior definition of 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, did you have a question?
Oh, I'm so sorry. What I was thinking was, since I sort of incited chaos, I'm feeling responsible. So one thing I was thinking, not to challenge, Adler, what you just said, and I'm not totally clear about joining. If maybe you said you integrated 1 and 4, but just to eliminate a group with too many people, group 1 could sort of join again and maybe formulates in part like an argument, part of the work we do, formulate an argument for how we relate to theme 4 or something like that. That could be a possibility, but I don't want to interrupt what you've reformulated here. So
let's hold that idea. To clarify, Adler's has left the prior 4 rooms and created a new room called theme 1/4. So those who want to continue separately in 1 or 4 can, those who want to combine to 1 and 4 can. But now back to Kate's idea. Kate, do you want to say more about that?
No, I was trying to just come up with a sort of organizational solution so we wouldn't have too many people in one room. But again, I mean, I think there would be value in, working to formulate an argument on why theme 1 is related to theme 4. So
would you do that in your own theme room, separate from the ones
Yeah.
we've mentioned? Okay, so you can we can rename theme B to be theme 1/4 argumentation. Does that?
We already have theme 1/4.
No, but Kate is making a
with
different
that.
point, I thought.
you know what? Let's leave it. Let's leave it as it is. I think there's plenty of room for exploration. I was just truly only trying to make sure there weren't, too many people in one room. So I think we're good.
There are enough people. I would suggest that you, for instance, join this with theme 1/4 and then making call for everyone who would like to join Kate, join this 1/4 and do this, because there's enough people, there's enough room, and so go for it.
Oh, we just need a facilitator for room 1/4. So
Kate
who's doing that?
is there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, I think Kate can do it, but I'll be happy to.
Okay.
It could be mutual. It could be mutual, or it could be collective.
So please choose your rooms now, and we'll pull you back about 20 past so that we get a little bit of a breather. Maybe a few minutes after 20 past, because we'll start the next part 2 at 25 of the hour. Wonderful.